Mr. Omar.
So I don't know if we are going to speak about them separately or we're going to speak about them together. I think there's already two that have said that they'd like to speak about them together, and I think at the end of the day, if we do both of these things justice, we do it justice by getting to a point where, we say where we're going to end up on these things ultimately. I think, first of all, as far as carving out one item, we've done that in the past. We did it in 2007 under Mayor Mitchell. And we had, 3 items, including term limits. And I think it would have been very easy if, since at that time there wasn't a desire to go ahead and create a charter review commission, they made decisions on things that they thought were important to go ahead and do it. And looking at the voting totals, it looks like they must have gotten it pretty close to right, because I think it was like 70% and above for each of the propositions that were put out there. One of the things that wasn't mentioned here, and I don't know if we know off the top of our head how many cities that there are in Texas that are this way. Do you happen to know that answer off the top of your head, or is that?
How many cities select the mayor from within? Mm-hmm. There was a TML report that was published that indicated that there were 6% of Texas cities have the mayor is selected from among the council members. Nationwide, that report cited 35%.
Okay, so I think one of the things that we've got to look at also is that the size of the city and how as cities mature and they get to a certain size, how that transfer has gone. And I know Councilman Dunn mentioned that there have been problems in other cities, but I think some of that is the city's just the attitude and even the personalities of the city. We've got a personality in Richardson of working together, and I don't know that that's necessarily a byproduct of whether we select or elect a mayor. I just think that's the personality of the city, and one that our residents expect of us, and one that that we'd like to be able to carry on. There have been at least dozens, and my guess is hundreds of cities. I know the city of Dallas is among many that were once run in the way that we run our city as it relates to election versus selection. And to my knowledge, at least again with any of the bigger cities that were once the way we do it and are now at a direct election, I haven't seen any of them that have gone back and changed their charter to say, this was a real disaster and we ought to go back to the other way. As a matter of fact, my guess is that most of those cities would see a revolt if something like that happened, because I think, again, the residents like the idea of being able to have their voice heard on the mayor's election. So, one of the things that we talked about earlier was it's an integrated piece, and it's a lot more complicated and all that. I look at, and I can't remember, Bill, can you help me with what number it is? Is it? There was so much talk of 4.01 that I got stuck on that. 302. So, my understanding is that and I don't know where we're going to end up on the Charter Review Commission, so I can, since we're only going to take this one first, under the assumption that we don't do anything with the Charter Review Commission, and that may or may not be a good assumption, but if we don't, the ability to just change Section 3.02, and all you're doing is changing the fact that after a brand new elected council, which, mind you, could include 7 people, and it's happened before in our history, so it's not that outlandish, brand new people on the council that are then, after 1 week after winning, then have to figure out which one of them is going to be mayor with no experience and no vetting of any mayor or anyone as mayor, that can happen. And so 3.02 would simply say, hey, all we're going to do is change that one aspect of what we do on the selection, and instead just have that individual get elected. You could choose at this point, if we choose not to do a charter review commission or another kind of charter review, you could choose at this point to just simply say we're going to amend 3.02. We're going to elect instead of select that one person, and we're not going to change any of the other duties. No additional powers, no additional ability to do anything else, still the same voting rights, still everything else the same. So I don't know that it's really all that much more complicated than we decide to make it. And from my perspective, if we think our system is set up well and the mayor shouldn't have any more power and all that, then there really isn't anything else in the charter that needs to be changed other than just a few words in 3.02 that says that the person gets elected, and we'd have to decide which one of our jobs to eliminate to create a position where the mayor would actually run in that particular seat, and the rest would take care of itself.
So you're proposing keeping 7 districts, but one of them being mayors. That's what you're saying.
I think that for simplicity's sake, and the big caveat here, and I'm not necessarily saying that I think we shouldn't have a charter review commission, but what I am saying is if in the second discussion we decide not to do a charter review commission, we could very simply, just like in 2007, we could very simply say we're just going to adjust the words in 3.02 and perhaps eliminate one of the at-large positions, since we've got 4 districts that we would remain the same. You'd eliminate one of the at-large, and you'd say if someone wants to run for mayor, they run in that particular spot, and then the rest goes from there. I mean, all the rest of the powers, all the rest of the duties, everything else remains the same, and nothing else would change. It's a simple fix if we decide to fix it. And then if we do a charter review commission one day, whether it's now because we decide in the second half of this conversation or 5 years from now or whenever, then if we want to adjust the powers of the mayor, if you think there should be more or less or whatever, or more definition, we could do all that then. But until the point where we feel comfortable with a commission or some other way to change the charter, I think we could very easily change this one thing in 3.02.
Mr. Solomon.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just coming back and thinking about some of the things that have been said, we talk about resident input. I agree that we do hear from residents all the time. I'm out there as much as anybody in the area. I don't think that I've had any major interest by any of the citizens that I've come in contact with that have come up to me and said, we've got to do this for the betterment of the city. They think the city is running very well. They think the city is doing very well. We think we've had good leadership. That leadership has changed over the years. It has continued to have a vision and a growth for the city. The ability to work together as a board, which elects its chairman, I think speaks volumes for us. I think that this has a great positive effect upon our position within the governance of the state. You talk about a requirement. We talk about the requirements of the mayor, and I mentioned 302, which actually says it. And just for the record, the mayor shall have 1 vote on all matters coming before the council. The mayor shall have no power of veto, shall represent the city in all matters, ceremonial occasions. Everybody was always getting on me about being a ceremonial position. There it is, right there, Section 302. It's ceremonial occasions and shall be known, far and wide is my emphasis, as the head official of the government. So that is the mayor's job today. I mean, it's pretty clear. And so we do this. Mayor Mitchell did it. Mayor Townsend's done it. Mayor Ritter did it. Mayor Nolan's done it. And so I think that it's pretty clear what the mayor does today, and we all agree with that. And if we had 7 new people, I think that those 7 new people could probably sit together as we did in May and come up with a decision on who's going to be the mayor. And that person, I would guess, if he was one of us or one of them that was there then, would probably be a fairly good leader. Obviously, he was, because he was elected by the people. The people elect each and every one of us. That's a given. They elect us. We have a personality within the city, I think, that is cooperative and is visionary. And so I think that what we are doing, and that has the way we've operated, really sets that tone, I believe. So I really don't see any need to go forward with the change in that area. As far as a charter review commission, and I've read the charter again this weekend. I knew it was coming up, so got a copy of it and read it. And again, you know, I was asked during the debate, "Have you read it?" "Yes, sir, I read it. Know it fairly well. I can't coach you the sections and charter and numbers, but I read it." And really, I don't see anything in there that's really earth-shattering that needs to be changed. I mean, you know, the boundaries are a little bit different, but you know, we've taken care of that in Section 403. There's some typographical errors, maybe, or I mean, punctuation errors, and I'm sure that we put an English teacher on the thing that might be able to find some more. But if you look at that cost and that time that would involve staff, citizens, and just the pure dollar cost of a commission, because we haven't even addressed what that would cost as far as, you know, staff time and paper and all of that, that we'd be talking about. I'd rather see that go to a slide. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you. And so, you know, you've got to prioritize things, just like I said before. And I just don't see that at this point in time, would be a good utilization of A, time, and B, money. So that's sort of where I stand on it.
Mr. Mayor, since Mr. Solomon's now jumped right into the charter discussion, can I make a suggestion? Because basically, you know, the short-term action item clearly says, you know, decide in term for a May election. I think we should vote. Do we, the 7, want to have the direct election of the mayor resolved tonight in order to have it on the May ballot? Well, no, we can actually vote. We've gotten the legal that during a work session we can actually do a vote. So what I would like to see is, let's put that one to rest. It may resurface in the conversation about the charter, but let's go ahead and get that action item taken care of, because I'll be honest, I'm going to say it again, I don't think it's as simple, because what place is it? I mean, which one of us is going to give up our seat?
Place 7.
Okay, well,
I mean,
then you can vote how you want to.
Well,
I'm
it's
saying.
numerically, I'm just saying it's numerically at the end of the line, so you could take it off 7, or you could take it off, put it at place 1, whichever one.
Okay, well, so that will weigh in your decision to vote, and again, I just think that kind of to Mr. Mitchell's point, you know, the way I view us is a board of trustees, and I think one of the hardest things that I as a council person have had to kind of come to, I guess, get my feet under me is, what is the role of the board of trustees? And that is vision, goals, things like that. It is not the day-to-day operations. And I think in that level, as a board of trustees, you know, most corporations, most boards elect their chairman from within. Now, I'm not saying that we won't look at some of these other things, but I just don't think we can pull it out and have it on the May vote. So I would move that we vote on the short-term action item of having this on the May ballot. Okay. Yes, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it?
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think a lot of good points have been made, but I do want to address one point about the 2007 charter change. Two of the items were made because of the fact that we believed at the time that we were not in sync with state law.
Right.
And so there was a decision made by this council to put that on the ballot. Now, and then the third item was term limits, and yes, that was a decision made by this council, but I will preface that by saying that I believe in the history of our city, there's only been a handful of people that have served more than 12 years. So I would agree that was something that was added, but the other two items, and I'm not saying that was right or wrong, but that was what occurred at the time. But the first two items were ones that we had to do in order to be able to accomplish executive session and to be able to continue meeting where we were. So I felt important to clarify that, Amir, but I do appreciate your points. But again, I would go back to the fact that, to me personally, regardless of how I might personally feel about this or how any of us may personally feel, I just don't simply believe that you can carve out this one item and make a change, because it does impact everything across the board on the way that things are governed. So for me personally, I would not be in support of making this change.
Ms. Maxco, you want to make a motion then?
Sure. I move that we cease discussion on the short-term action item, election versus selection of mayor, review and time for May 2012 ballot consideration.
I have a second. I have a motion by Ms. Maxco, second by Mr. Hartley. Any discussion on the motion?
I'd like to have some discussion.
Yes, Mr. Omar.
So I'm just going to make a final point, and then we'll make our vote. But I got to imagine, and I could be wrong on this, and I'd love to know. But if this was on the ballot, let's just hypothetically say this was on the ballot, whether it be May or November or sometime in the future. But for the sake of this particular discussion, if it was on the ballot in May, 3.02, a couple simple changes, specifically, instead of selecting, that you would use the word elect, and that you would put it in place 1 or place 7 or place 10 or whatever you want to call it. I believe strongly that the measure would pass 85, maybe even 90. It might break the record for the best charter change in approval in Richardson history. And I think that a number of us feel like we represent, the residents of Richardson, and to a great degree that a part of our job, obviously, is to weigh what we think the residents of the city would like to see. Now, residents of the city may not stop by and stop you, Mr. Solomon, and say, hey, I'd really feel like our city's in shambles because we don't elect our mayor. I don't think anyone would say that. But they may also not stop you and say, hey, I think, we ought to have an extra column of windows. But, we know ultimately that if they were asked, hey, do you like this one over that one? They probably would say, yeah, I'd like the windows, right? And so that's why we all kind of make those decisions. In this particular case, it's not like we're changing the whole world of Richardson. All we're doing is just changing one small portion that, quite frankly, in some instances is kind of an unfair thing to ask a brand new council. To Scott Dunn's point earlier, Councilman Dunn mentioned, today he has a pretty good feel for the council, but the fact of the matter is 1 week in, after just being elected, you may not, and not to speak for you, but people may not necessarily already have that sense for each other because they haven't had a chance to work with each other. So, it's for all those reasons that I'm going to be in support of this. I think it's a little bit of a cop-out if what we do is we say, hey, let's vote on it based on can it be ready in May. At the end of the day, we put it as a short-term action item to discuss it in time for a May election, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the May election is the end of the world. And so, whether it's a May election or a November election, I think it's important that when we vote, that we consider at least stating, is this something that we're saying directionally we do not believe the residents should vote? And that's it. So from my perspective, I believe, before we take this vote, I believe the residents should be able to vote for their mayor. It's something I said, when asked during campaign, and it's something that I continue to say.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
I think one point that needs to be brought up here is that I think, at least for me, I probably had an equal number of people say, I would like to be able to directly vote for mayor. I've had people say, I like the way that it is. I think that that's a fair assumption. I don't want to discount what you may have said, Mark, but I know that we've all had that said. And I think that with that being said, is that by voting no here isn't necessarily saying we're closing the door to this topic. I think we're just saying we don't want to pull this out, or at least from my perspective, I don't want to pull this out and have this just by itself. And so my no vote is just simply saying I don't want to pull this out and have it as a separate item. I think that that's an important feature here because I think we've all had people make comments on both sides, and we're not necessarily closing the door by voting no on this, because when we talk about the charter, it will be a topic there as well, I'm sure. So, thank you.
Mr. Dunn.
Yeah. First of all, I have to agree with Councilman Solomon over here about the citizens. Have I had a large number come to me and say, why aren't we voting for our mayor? No, I haven't. In fact, I've had, oh, really? We don't? And I think Ms. Maska is a prime example, taking Mr. Slagle's or Mayor Slagle's spot. You know, a lot of folks thought that was the mayor's spot. And so they will have to be educated. Amir, yeah, if you go out there and educate them, that's fine. But will they be educated enough to know all the ramifications of the direct election of a mayor? I go again and say that, look at Dallas. Well, I'm not going to look at some of these other ones that have a direct election of mayor and how dysfunctional they are with their council. And so I think we work together very well. I think it's important to the council members that are elected to, even within that 1 week we're on the campaign trail, they learn and know who they're going to be serving with or potential who they're going to be serving with. Get out and talk to folks, the civic leaders, the community leaders, the church leaders. Get out there and talk to them and see what they have to say. So those are some of the same ones that are plugged into our citizenship here.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Maska, a second by Mr. Hartley. And you want to restate the motion that is to cease?
To cease the discussion.
To cease?
To cease the discussion. Oh, my iPad's gone. This is the problem with technology. It times out. Basically, I move, I'll just go from my memory. I move that we cease discussion of election versus selection of the mayor in time for the May 2012 ballot.
It means taking no action on it.
Taking no action.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? That carries 6-1 with Mr. Omar voting no. Okay, now then we'll go on into whether we're going to have a charter review or not, or appoint a charter commission. Discussion? As soon as Mr. Solomon gets his...
That's what I said.
Okay, we'd have any discussion? Mr. Omar.
While we wait for technical difficulties, this will be a lot shorter, and that's just that it sounds like some have said that they can't make the mayor decision without some sort of a charter commission. And so, you know, from my perspective, whether it be through a charter commission or it be through, you know, staff putting together a list of, you know, discussion points, I'd be in favor of going ahead and moving forward with a charter review of some kind. I do find it interesting in the presentation, and I didn't know this, Michelle, that it looked like we had done 4 charter reviews in something like 25 years or 28 years, I think, and then we did 0 in the last 24. And so, you know, I think that the wisdom of our predecessors was that there were 4 charter review commissions in that period of time. You know, maybe after 20 some odd years, it's time for another one. So that's my position, and I probably won't have a whole heck of a lot more to say.
Any more discussion? Mr. Dunn.
Right. Michelle, out of the first 24 years and the reviews, how many times was it changed? 0. Right. Okay. That's my point. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Ms. Maska.
Well, I've kind of, like Mr. Solomon, I knew this was coming, and so, you know, before I was elected and then after I was elected, I read the charter and I've read it again. And Michelle, I appreciate the details, and you confirmed what my gut was, and what talking to those who were involved is. It's a very extensive process, and so I kind of have 2 categories about this topic that I call it the legalities and the realities. So in terms of the legalities, I think absolutely my number one concern about this charter is the items that are in conflict with or superseded by state or federal laws. And I I think the city attorney has weighed in on this, but I would like to make sure that the legalities of the charter are addressed. And then moving on to the realities, I guess when I think about what this undertaking is going to be for the city, I think that if we're going to do it, we need to take the time and dedicate the resources to do it the right way. And in my mind, what that involves, which was why I was saying we cannot do this in the next 30 days. I don't think that this is a 30-day process. I think it's going to involve extensive, I think it's going to take an extensive effort to determine who's actually going to sit on that commission. Because I think that the danger, quite frankly, if we're all honest, is the personal agendas. And we're going to have to do a very thorough job of making sure that we allow broad input from a whole variety of citizens. And so to me, that in and of itself is going to involve a lot of work on the city manager's office and the staff, Pam, the city secretary, and the council, because I think we're going to have to actually interview candidates to determine how are we going to choose this commission, which, again, if that's what the will of the council is, I'm willing to do it. I just want us to all be very realistic about what we're going to undertake. As Michelle mentioned, more than a year, 36 meetings, and that was at a time when, I know that life has gotten faster. I know it's hard to get, it's hard to get a PTA meeting with a quorum. So, I think that while it may have taken a year last time, I think we all need to be ready for something that's a little longer than that. I don't think that you can schedule 33 meetings in 12 months. That's a lot of meetings in a month. And so, again, and I know where Amir falls on this, but I'll ask it of everybody, as we review the charter, I think each of us needs to say what needs to be changed. Because you undergo a charter review if you think things need to be changed. And then kind of my bottom line, as I was really thinking about how I felt about this, and, we all were asked these questions during the campaign, and is it a charter review, and is it a commission, and what I've learned through educating myself and input from those who've been there is that there's quite a few variations of what that means. So what I did was I went back to look at what council voted on as our agenda for the next 2 years. My concern is we set a very aggressive agenda. And then I looked at where we'd ranked, and I went through the top 25. For land use and development, we had 6 of our short-term action items under that category. For community vitality and neighborhood integrity, we had 4. Fiscal responsibility, 4 action items. Economic development, 3. Communications, 2. Public services, 1. Environmental, 2. Marketing, 1. Governance, we had golf and council meeting efficiency, 1 each. So I guess the question we have to ask ourselves, is this the most pressing issue facing this council? And if we think it is, I will be in favor of jumping full force into it. But I think we all need to be very realistic in knowing that if we take this on, that's what this term is going to be about, the charter review. It's going to require our attention. It's going to require our input. And I'm willing to listen to my peers to determine whether each of us feels that this is the most important issue facing our community during this 2-year term. So there's my soapbox.
Comments? Any more? Any more discussion? Mr. Dunn.
I was lucky in the last election. I was unopposed. But even when I was unopposed, I specifically said that I was not in favor of a charter review other than where the state overrode the charter. I still stand by that. So as Councilmember Maska said, just where the legalities, and I had a couple conversations, from my understanding there's not a whole lot, if any. So with that, my only point or next item is, and Ms. Maska stole my thunder on it, is what specifically needs to be changed.
Any more comments? Okay, well, I keep going back to that League of Women Voters forum on the charter, on the Richardson Charter, and when Dr. Robert Lowry, who's head of the political science department at UTD, when he was asked the question, is there a model charter? His response was, Richardson's charter is pretty close to the model charter. And so that convinced me that we've got a pretty good charter as is. Okay, any more discussion? Mr. Omar.
Yeah, I just, number one, I don't think this is the most pressing matter before the council, and so from that perspective, I agree with Councilman Maska. I think I agree there's a lot more important things, and I agree that this probably would take a lot of time if we did decide to do it. You know, my position at this point is that, you know, I find it interesting that the answer to the reason why we can't or shouldn't move forward with a mayor discussion is because it's going to take more things in the charter to consider as far as different elements that might need to be adjusted. But then when we come to the charter decision, we shouldn't do that either because it's not the number one thing. I mean, I think we've got 60 short-term action items. None of them, well, only one of them is the number one thing, and I think we've already ranked those. And so, you know, ultimately the Charter Review Commission, if we decide we wanted to move forward, I don't know that that's the way to do it. If what we're saying, and let me come up with a compromise solution, because my guess is that this goes down as well in terms of a Charter Review Commission, which is fine. But perhaps a compromise position is if the reason why we can't talk about or move forward on anything on the mayor is because it's more far-reaching as it relates to the charter, but we also don't want the burden of having to look at the charter or have a charter review commission because it's going to take up a whole lot of hours and time, and I agree to some degree with that. Then perhaps what we do is we simply say, staff, come back to us in whether it's a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and tell us, hey, what other items on this charter would need to be changed in order to consider the election or selection of mayor. I mean, if the reason you're against the mayor thing is because of the charter implications, we don't have to do a full charter review to look at that. So, you know, there is a compromise position there, and we could just simply vote this no because of the way we happen to write it in the short-term action items, or we could say, hey, there's another way to do this. So I'll leave it at that.
Any more discussion? Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I think the challenge here is that it has been 23 years since we've done a full look at the entire charter. But I think that the issue is here is I think at the stratospheric level, if I might use that term, I don't think, at least for me, I don't have a philosophical problem with a charter review, but the devils is always in the details. And the concern I have is simply this: is that before we would go forward with something like this, I would want to know, you know, what is it that we're going to look at? How much staff time is it going to take? How much an election would cost? And how long do we think that this would take? So for me personally, like I said, at the stratospheric level, I don't philosophically have a problem with a charter review, but what I have an issue with are the details of how it would be implemented if we were to do it. And so that's why, for me personally, taking a vote on this is I would be a little uncomfortable because I don't know that I have all the details to make that decision at this moment.
Any more discussion?
Do you want a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'd make
Okay.
a motion, Mr. Solomon.
Well, I move that the City Council cease the discussions relative to the charter review and take no action at this time.
We have a motion by Mr. Solomon and a second by Mr. Dunn. Any discussion on the motion? All in? Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
One question I have is just to make sure that everybody understands is that this is ending all discussion about this topic, correct? I just want to make sure. And at this time, in this council, in this 2-year set term,
Yeah.
Correct?
You always take it up again, I guess.
Well, and the reason why I say that is because I think that to me, well, no. The reason why I say that is because to me, I have a lot of unanswered questions that I would like to get answered, and to vote on this and just say put it behind us for the next 2 years. I have some struggles with that. no, it's not the most pressing issue. Absolutely, it's not. For me, I would really like to get these questions answered. But, if that's the will of the council to take a vote on it, then
You can always get those issues.
that's true.
You get more of them to agree with you, then we'll bring it back up again.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? That carries 5-2 with Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Omar voting no.